What happens when things don't go as planned, or the year unfold the way that you didn't hope or pray that it would? Maybe you started the year with so much intention, with goals, declarations, vision boards, you name it, only to find yourself facing disappointment after disappointment. So, what do you do when life doesn't line up with the script that you had in mind? Hey everybody, welcome to the Let's Get Deep podcast, a sacred pause in a busy world. This is where you have a moment to breathe, to reset, and really to realign with yourself and remember that you are a body, a soul, and a spirit. My name is Latabo, and I'm really glad to have you here. If you've been tuning in since episode 1, then you are so welcome here. I'm so glad to have you back here. And if you're new, welcome, welcome, welcome. And as always, before we go into today's episode, do me a favor, right where you are, just pause with me and inhale and exhale everything out slowly. Drop your shoulders if you need to, and let yourself arrive at this very moment and just fully be here. Don't try to force anything. Don't try to understand anything. Just be here. Okay. So, this time of the year, it has a very strange way of making us reflect, right? We find ourselves naturally wanting to look back at the year and see how far we've come. And not only because, the calendar kind of forces us to reflect, right? But also because our souls happen to know when a chapter is ending. Our inner being knows a whole lot more before we can even get up to speed to what's happening or what's coming. Your spirit often senses a shift long before you can catch up to it mentally or even physically. So we speak a lot about change, right? If you've been around, or you've been on social media reading different quotes and motivations and inspirations, you'd find that people often say that we should be comfortable with change. It's one of the things that it's okay to be comfortable with. You should embrace it, welcome it. But we rarely talk about the in between, the corridor moments, the hallway moments, this moments where you are in the space in between what was and what will be. If you're not catching up, you pretty much know or can hear and sense that I'm talking about transitions. It's where you're not where you used to be, but also you're no longer you're not where you used to be, and neither are you the person that you used to be. But at the same time, you're not who maybe God is creating or making you become at the same time. And the older I get is the more I realize that we're always living in transition. We're always living in the in-between. I heard a preacher once say that we are always, or our whole lives are within a dash. And if you think about it, if you go to a funeral, how they write that person's time that they spent within the earth is that they write their birthday, and then they have a dash, and then they write their death date. And obviously we know our birthdays, but we don't know the death date, right? Only God knows the death date. And everything else that happens in life, everything that shapes us, that forms us, that breaks, that builds, The whispers, the yes, the no, the healing, whatever that needs to happen, all of it happens within that dash. This is where every single decision is made, every healing that needs to happen, or whether it happens or not, it happens within that dash. The surrender or lack of surrender, the yes, the no, the maybe, the not yet, all of it is within that dash, and it all matters. I'll even take it a step further to say that we are in a waiting season as well. We are waiting for eternity, right? We are in a preparation for eternity. What we do echoes into eternity. And if we zoom in even further to our lives, life is full of much smaller decisions and dashes too. Before we even get into examples about life and what I want to talk about today, let's take nature for example, because nature teaches this as well. If you look at the caterpillar and the butterfly, in between you have the cocoon phase where it is dark, it's hidden and silent, and it feels uncomfortable. A place where identity is being, identity is being dissolved before it can transform into a butterfly. You have a seed and a tree. And in between, you have the soil where everything important needs to take place, where it is nourished and given everything, where that seed is given everything that it needs before it sprouts up into a tree. But during that moment, everything seems silent. I can even go or give an example with winter and spring. Before you get the bloom of the flowers, there's this silent moment where the ground needs to thaw first. The ice, if there was ice within the winter, it needs to warm up first, and then it can sprout up. Suddenly, you see the flowers as if the previous day there was nothing, right? So, what nature teaches us is that everything has an in between. Everything becomes before it arrives. I'll even take it a step further and to say that transitions are not a punishment, but they are preparation. We often quote Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11, that says that God has made everything beautiful in its time. And what this tells me is that if something is not beautiful, then it's not yet time. And as you are listening, I want to ask you, where are you right now? Are you exiting a season? Are you entering a season? Are you sitting in the hallway like most of us? Where are you? So, as I talk about this in between, especially since we are wrapping up 2025, I want to ask you, right? Because I've been thinking about this topic for a really long time as well. Like, how do we know that we are in a transition phase? Because it's important to slow down and recognize the subtle signs of transition. Because sometimes transitions arrive in the most disruptive ways ever. You lose a job, you get a new job, a breakup, a loss, a relocation, a sudden relocation that disrupts your entire system and your entire being. But also, I want to highlight that most of the time, or sometimes, transition can also have little subtle signs, and I know this for myself, where your old habits don't serve you anymore. And I know this for me, especially this year, but I'll speak about it a bit later on. Another subtle sign is when you have desires that are starting to shift. When you were younger, for example, you wanted to be in that certain profession, but as you get older, your interests are changing and your desires are changing, and now you're drawn to something else. Something that used to comfort you in a certain season now doesn't comfort you maybe in a similar season. You don't find comfort in the same things anymore. Something that used to scare you, now it doesn't scare you anymore. I could go on and on. Another subtle one that I want to mention, another subtle sign that is when you feel restless, but not in the dramatic way or chaotic way where you just want to, I don't know, do something else. No, but you feel a shift. It's like a stirring within you. You feel called to grow or to move or to do something, but you don't know into what or where yet. You see, transitions are not always as dramatic as we think they are. Yes, we do have dramatic transitions. As I've mentioned before, you lose a job, you get a new job, whatever the case may be. But sometimes they really are gradual, they're quiet, they're very much gentle. Sometimes they unfold in a way that, for example, if you look at the sunrise, if you're fortunate enough to stay on the east side of the world and you're able to see the sunrise, one minute you're not seeing it, one minute you just see the sky brightening up gradually. And the next moment you see the full sun up in the sky. It's soft, it's steady, it's slow, it's gentle. So, what has been shifting quietly on the inside of you? Do you perhaps know, especially if you're in a transition, if any of this resonates with you really? Have you outgrown something in your life? Maybe mentally, emotionally, spiritually. These are subtle signs that you're about to enter into a transition phase of your life. Or perhaps maybe you're coming out of one, or you are within one. And I want to speak about how to handle all of that, but stay with me, right? Stay with me up until the end to get all the nitty gritties about transitions. Not sure how this episode is going to go, but bear with me. Bear with me. I'm going somewhere here. So, another thing that I want to highlight about transitions that we don't often talk about is that we have different transitions or the in-betweens that happen within that dash of our life. There are certain transitions that we choose and those that choose us. And unfortunately, that's how life is, right? Some transitions, we walk into them intentionally and deliberately so, such as choosing to heal. Healing is a journey. It's a transition moving from a place where you are wounded to a place where you are healed. Or in one way, healed in a certain aspect, because I feel like we're always on a healing journey. Setting boundaries, for example, the minute you set a boundary, you need to walk it out and make sure that you enforce that boundary to yourself and to the other people involved in that process or in that certain situation. Growing up or growth in whatever form is also a transition of some sort. You grow into what you need to be or where you need to be. Choosing to rest. Resting is not easy. As I said, this entire season of the podcast is about resting. And because resting, we often see it as just, sleeping. It's not just about that. And I mentioned that in the other episodes. But yeah, moral of the story, choosing to rest could also be a transition, especially if the season prior to that, you were moving. And trust me, I know all about that, and I'm going to talk about it. So stay tuned for that. But I also want to highlight the transitions that often choose us. We don't go into them deliberately so. It's when life throws us into the deep end and it just says to us, just breathe. For example, losing a job, gaining an opportunity you didn't expect. You've been knocking and knocking and knocking, and all of a sudden, when you least expect it, a door opens up. A relationship ending that you didn't see coming. It's when life takes a turn that you never planned for. Those transitions will feel like you're being pushed into the deep end. And for some reason, somehow, you discover that, hey, I can float. They're not there to drown you at all. It's like, if I go back to the whole tree analogy or nature, it's like you're being uprooted where you are, only to discover that, hey, maybe I was going to be, or I'm being moved into richer soil that needs or that has more nutrients, or the nutrients that you need to grow into the person that you need. But I want to say that both kinds of transitions are important. They shape us, and both kind, they require grace, they require rest, and they require God. By both kinds, I mean the transitions that we choose and those that we do not choose ourselves. Those that are subtle and those that are disruptive. Those kind of disruptions, all of them require the same thing, and they all yield to the same result if we surrender to the process and we navigate them properly and accordingly, which is what I also want to talk about, how to navigate transitions, because we don't often talk about that, because our entire beings are about becoming, but we often want to rush out of the seasons that we're in. And I think this is fitting for where we are in the year, wanting to wrap up the year. But anyway, I will talk about it. So before I get into that, this topic, as I mentioned before, it feeds directly into what we often refer to as the waiting season. I don't know about you, but I am in a waiting season myself in all aspects of my life. I never knew what waiting meant up until this year. Literally, up until this year, I didn't know what a waiting season meant or felt like or what it looked like. So, in all, literally, if you name a department of my life, I'll probably say yes. I am definitely waiting, or I'm in some sort of waiting season in that specific department. So before we speak about that, I just want to say, since we're closing out the year, I just want us to sit here for a moment, right? We often want to tie seasons to dates. For example, I'll start in January. As I said, I'm recording this in December. So we often say, no, I'll start in January, I'll start tomorrow, I'll start Monday, for example. I'll try again next year. New year, new me type of thing, as if something magically happens on the 1st of January, as if you're not the same person with the same habits and same old problems from the 31st of December. But the truth is, most transitions, they don't obey the calendar. They don't follow any sort of timeline. What they do obey is your calling, the timing, and alignment. And all of that only God knows. But I do understand that waiting is uncomfortable. As I said, trust me, I know. I didn't know what waiting was up until this year. This year taught me something so profound about, setting goals. And for the first time in my entire life, and I feel like I've been doing this without actually knowing or seeing it or really articulating it, but for the first time in my entire life, I went into this year with no goals whatsoever. Not a single one. No resolutions, nothing to prove, nothing that I was going to force, nothing. I simply handed God a blank canvas and I said to him, do what you need to do. I am at your service. And the things that he wrote and started painting and putting onto that canvas, I would have never written myself. Never in a million years. Starting this podcast was one of them. One of the things I never would have put on. And I think it's time I share the journey into how this podcast got released, right? So, the name of the podcast, which is Let's Get Deep, I got it a couple of years ago. I don't know how far back. Actually, I don't know how far back. But when I was trying to get the date that I ended up writing on my phone as I was writing out my dreams, so to say, the date of that note on my phone is, I found that it was the 29th of September. Yes, the 29th of September 2024. That was what was written. I just wrote, Let's Get Deep podcast, and it is going to be a wellness podcast. And this was a year ago, but obviously it was all prior to that. So remember, I said I gave God a blank canvas, but at the same time, I felt the nudge to, I want to be clear so that people don't be out here, no, not planning their lives. Don't do what I did. I There was a reason, or there's a reason why I did what I did. It's because of the season prior to that, or the couple of months prior. Something happened that led me to then, pull back and stop and reevaluate my entire life and surrender and do all of that. But please stay with me. So I gave him a black canvas, and I was dealing with a lot of things, man. Like I was dealing with, yeah, there was a lot I was dealing with that I didn't have. I was like, I can't think right now. It's not time for me to set any sort of goals for the year. And at the same time, I was dealing with a lot of spiritual warfare, and that is an entire topic on its own. And by spiritual warfare, I mean real in the fire, burning type of situation in the spirit, obviously. But yeah, that's a story for another day. So I started the year with a Daniel fast, a 21-day Daniel fast, all because, well, this was my personal one. It wasn't the one that, the church would initiate or so forth. And I think this year, the church that I go to, they had, I think, less than a week's length fast. So I started, and then theirs came, and then I continued with mine. The church one came. So yeah, moral of the story was a personal one. And during that time, I want to call it an instruction or a nudge. I mean, among all other things, among many other things, right? During that I got from that whole fast, one of the things that I got that I want to highlight was that I need to run my business. So this podcast is a little branch off of my business, which is a holistic health coaching business where I give one-on-one coaching and group sessions concerning or helping people handle stress holistically and have a work-life balance so that they can, restore their lives, they can have energy, they can feel good in their body and perform well at work, right? But I bring in the body, the soul, and the spirit, because to me, all of those work as one. You can't thrive in your body and then neglect the state of your mind or your emotions, for example, right? So anyway, I bring it all together so that you can thrive in the work that you supposed to do. You can't do the work that you need to do without your health, right? And I stop people from going in cycles, or I help them stop in going in cycles in their wellness journey. Like, for example, you want to lose weight, you gain, you lose, you weigh, you gain, all of that. I stop the cycle, I help them stop the cycle, and I align their wellness with heaven, which is something that is not done a lot, because we need to align ourselves with what heaven says about us and the seasons that we're in, the capacity of our lives, and so forth. But anyway, the podcast is a branch off of that, right? So I got a nudge, run the business. And as I started stepping out in faith, I then stepped out and I got to a point where one day I was having my alone time with God, or my devotion really, and I got another sense, or a nudge. And I sensed that God was telling me, hey, Letabo, I gave you a voice, use it. And that stopped me in my tracks. It stopped me in everything and left me speechless. It's one statement that was enough to let me just sit with it for a couple of weeks or even months. Because I realized and I learned that God doesn't speak for the sake of speaking. No, He doesn't just do that. And this word made me realize that, or made me understand why certain people would say that the enemy is out to get your voice, basically, or is after your voice, is out to silence you, to stop you from doing what you need to do. Because my entire life, I was the one behind the scenes. I was the one, literally, I'd be on the ground running, doing everything behind the scenes to make sure that things are going well. So that step required grit and faith. It required a lot of courage from me to do. I grew up a very shy child, but luckily, as I grew older, that shell broke a bit, but I still had that timidity, so to say. This actually reminds me that I saw a post the other day where someone said that we often, as introverts, if you're an introvert, you probably relate to what I'm about to say. The person said that as introverts, we often like to say we're shy, right? And the person went on to then Google what shy meant. And one of the definitions had you're sort of scared and you are in fear. But when she went into scripture and she went into the Bible verse that says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. So if I am supposed to not operate in timidity, and being shy is basically being timid, then I'm not operating by the Spirit of God. If anything, I'm being sinful, right? But anyway, moral of the story, I grew up in that state of being shy, not wanting to be in front of the camera, not wanting to be in front of anything, or public speaking. It terrified me. So imagine when I heard that sense, when God said, hey, Letabo, I gave you a voice, use it. Imagine how I felt. But in His mercy, He started lining things up. So at the time as well, I had started working with a coach, a business coach, and it got to a point where she also mentioned, she was like, okay, you need to start being in front of people. You need to start hosting some sort of workshops, anything, whatever that you can do to be in front of your people so that they can get to know you, right? The people that I serve. And funny enough, around the same time, while she said that, I was also drawn to guided meditations or Christian guided meditations because I do not see a lot of those, especially if you go on YouTube and you're trying to meditate. All you get is, new age things and other things that are not biblically sound, right? So for some reason, even the season prior or a while back, months before, years before, I've always been drawn to instrumental music, right? The calming, soothing instrumental music or instrumental worship as well. And I don't know, an idea just popped up like, hey, maybe I can try do the meditations myself since there aren't a lot of those. And so when my coach said, hey, you need to be in front of people, what kind of workshops can you do? I was like, oh, I can do Christian guided meditations because I was drawn to it. Oh, wow, I did a lot. Okay. I even took a short course, I think on Allison or Udemy or something like that, a very short course on Christian guided meditation, just so that I understand what meditation meant from a Christian perspective and all of that, so that I don't lead people astray and I don't invite spirits that are not supposed to be there, all of that. So I did all of that, and all of this was happening at the same time when God told me this. And yeah, this has been a journey now that I'm speaking about it. But anyway, I started hosting these virtual sessions, workshops, could be monthly. I still do even now, either monthly or weekly or bi-weekly, whatever the case may be, on different topics. Sometimes it's workshops, sometimes it's not workshops, sometimes it is the Christian guided meditations. And fast forward to later on, I opened the YouTube channel because I thought, oh, God is telling me, hey, start hosting. Use your voice, right? So I opened the YouTube channel, this current YouTube channel. And if you check, the first videos are guided meditations, really. You can check them out. But what surprised me is, as much as I enjoy doing guided meditations, I don't mind leading people into a moment of stillness in God's presence. I don't mind all of that. But for some reason, the process of creating those meditations was frustrating me. For some reason, you know how you start something new, right? When you start something new, at first you need to get the hang of whatever that you need to do, and you grow into it. And if it's aligned with you, you turn to love it and fall in love with it. With me, oh no. It was the total opposite. I didn't enjoy any minute of it. Nothing about it. And listen, don't get me wrong, I don't mind editing videos, I don't mind all of that. Well, the basic part of it, I'm not a videographer or anything like that, but I don't mind all of that. But for some reason, that entire process frustrated me. And I'm one person that if I start something, I want to be consistent in it. No matter what happens, I just want to be consistent with it. But with that, for some reason, it got to a point where I just couldn't. I couldn't. So fast forward to me then recording the very first episode. That was an entire journey on its own. It was an entire journey. And please stay with me. There's a reason I'm telling you this story. The first episode, I think I had like 5 takes. But in what I'm trying to say is, all of those times when I was hosting those virtual workshops and meditations and recording and doing all of that, I was building confidence in myself, in my voice, because also I didn't like the sound of my voice. I think you would often hear people say that, but I didn't like the sound of my voice. So let alone speak in front of a camera and, say things right. I was in front of standing in front of people or public speaking. I also self-criticize myself. I can be a perfectionist sometimes and feel like, hey, if I don't say the right thing or say things correctly or be the best public speaker before launching and all of that, I could actually, self-sabotage the process. So when I got to the point where I was releasing the first episode, it was really, it got to a point where as if the enemy was playing in my mind to say, you see, you shouldn't be doing this, because I kept on messing things up. I wasn't happy with the script that I had written. I had to rewrite the script multiple times. I had to do every single thing over and over again, up to 5 times. But what I want to highlight is that entire process led me to this point where even if I was still scared, even if I'm still trying to find my footing, everything aligned according to what God, or the way God wanted, and it aligned to His timing. I mean, from the mic that I'm using to the setup, and thanks to my friend for that, to me having a person I can talk to regarding editing the video and the platform for it. It was as if it was one piece falling into place after the other. It was as if it was a domino effect. And to me, that is all God, to be honest. Remembering that I got this idea a couple of years ago. Yes, I might have written it down last year, but I got it lost a while back. This journey hasn't been comfortable and it hasn't been the easiest. But what I'm trying to say is that if I had forced my own goals this year, I would have limited the way God would have wanted things to play out this year. I would have limited what He wanted to do in my life. And remember, I said that transitions often obey the calling, the timing, and alignment. So maybe the entire year for you was exactly that you are in the becoming, because that was me. Remember that my journey didn't start on the 1st of January of this year. This goal was a while. It took so many years. But for the sake of this podcast and this conversation, let's say from last year, September. From last year, September, only for the first episode to be released on the 15th of November, a whole year and a couple of months later. So like I said, maybe this has been your entire year. And funny enough, I told my friend that I feel like this entire year has been exactly that for me. It has been about this podcast. Because from the coach that I worked with to my interests, aligning with what I needed to do here. The moment of pausing before every episode and at the end of every episode, it started then. It all added up to this point. And listen, I understand there are moments where we set goals and we can often self-sabotage and be perfectionists about them and all of that. But this speaks to what I refer to as not wanting to abort the mission or the transition, not wanting to give birth prematurely. Just because the calendar is changing and now all of a sudden it's the 1st of January doesn't mean that it's time for you to give birth to that vision, to that goal. So maybe that one goal that you haven't seen come to pass yet, maybe it's not yet its appointed time. And like I said, I know there are certain factors to this or that, this what I'm saying, but that's not the point here. So some transitions, some waiting seasons, if not most, they don't honor the fact that the year is coming to an end. They don't honor the fact that, hey, everyone else is flourishing and whatever the case may be, and you are not. Because who said they need to follow that timeline? Because what if your new year starts on the 27th of December? What if your new year starts on a random Friday in February? It's funny that I speak about this because to me, I said to my cousin the other day that I feel like my year started on my birthday, which is the 1st of November. I felt like from the 1st of November, I stepped into the new year. So to me, for some reason, I felt a shift, right? I can't describe it, but I felt a shift and I was like, it feels as if it's a new year. And yes, it is a new year. I turned a year older, but my point is it felt like I was stepping into a new season. And so I don't know where you are. Maybe some years are for you to, go knocking on every single door where you feel like nothing is happening. There's nothing loud about it. For some reason, maybe it may feel like things stay the same. Nothing is happening. There's nothing glamorous about it. There's nothing Instagram worthy, nothing, whatever. But there's something happening and forming deep on the inside of you. This is where God works in silence, where He changes you more than He changes the circumstance around you. And I feel like to some extent, as much as, yes, this podcast is out there, is something I can note that this happened this year, and the content that I put out and the workshops and everything that I put out. But for me as well, this year has been about that, where God was changing me more than He's changing the circumstances around me. As I said before, I feel like I'm in a waiting season in all aspects. Literally my entire life, the business as well, the podcast, everything, where you feel like nothing is happening. But I want you to know that a year of silent breakthroughs is also beneficial. Because for me personally, what has happened this year is that internally I've changed the way that I think, the way that I feel, the way that I process emotions, the way that I discern, the way that I rest, the wisdom that I carry even now. I didn't have all of this in January. If anything, I felt like God was renovating my entire temple. Temple being the body. Not publicly, but quietly. Like He was preparing me for something that I still don't have a language for as yet. And maybe that's your year too. A year where you can't explain what has changed, but you're simply not the same person anymore because you can feel it. You can feel it in your being, you can feel it in your bones. As I said, silent breakthroughs are still breakthroughs. Those private transformations and transitions are still transitions, those subtle ones that I mentioned. Internal growth is still growth. So again, we started this topic by saying we often don't talk a lot about the waiting season and how to wait and how we know that we are in a waiting or a transition season. We often not taught how to navigate a transition from one job into the other. Mentally, how do you prepare yourself? We're not taught how to navigate transitions, not only spiritually, emotionally, mentally, but we are often taught how to start and we are taught how to end things. But no one teaches us how to live gracefully in the middle. And the middle is often messy. And so before you step into the new year, before you step into 2026, I want to invite you to sit with yourself and sit with God, not out of condemnation, not out of deep regret for what the things you did or the things you delayed, or maybe you've been disobedient in a certain area. No, but truly to reflect. Take a hold of your future intentionally to align with what heaven is saying about your life. Because sometimes you be out here wanting to be a manager and planning for that promotion when God wants you to be somewhere completely different. Sometimes you may want to leave a place, but He's saying, no, stay. Sometimes you may want to stay, but no, He's slowly closing that door. And one thing, my friend, that I've learned and that I'm learning is that God, He's never in a rush. One speaker or preacher, I heard her describe Jesus as the most relaxed person. They asked her, how would you describe Jesus? And she said, relaxed. And I can attest to that. Because we tend to put ourselves under these self-imposed rhythms and deadlines and pressure, unnecessary pressure. And then we wonder why we feel so frustrated, so misaligned. But heaven has a rhythm. Heaven has a pace, and it has a timing. And this is something that I teach in my coaching as well, especially with busy professionals, right? That wellness is not just physical, it's also spiritual. We often ask Google what to eat. We we follow influencers on their trends and ask them, how did they lose the weight? We go on TikTok to find out, what's the best diet and so forth. But rarely do we pause and ask God, Lord, how would you want me to nourish my body in this season? Because He knows what's to come. Again, I will say we are living in the dash. He knows what's to come. He knows the season that's about to enter, and He knows how you need to prepare and nourish yourself for it. And I'm not just talking physically here. I'm talking mentally as well. Physically, we tend to want to prepare for the promotion by studying, by elevating, by doing all of the things, but one important thing, and that is taking care of our body, our soul, and our spirit. We don't want to sit with God and ask Him, what rhythm are you calling me into in this season? We're not asking Him about what He has to say about our habits, the direction that we are going in, our desires being even your cravings. You see, holistic wellness isn't just something that we do for the sake of. This is holistic wellness with heaven's partnership. And holistic wellness is the driving force of your entire life. So where have you been moving at your own timing instead of the rhythm of heaven? Another point I want to touch on regarding being in the waiting season is that in the midst of transition, resting is very important. And rest is not passive. Rest is not a sense or a form of weakness. Rest is not doing nothing. Because let me tell you, at the start of this year, the season prior actually, I wasn't resting. And when I went into this year, I felt the nudge that, hey, perhaps I need to rest a bit, right? Or literally go into rest or moment of surrender. And I felt that God was leading me into that. And so while all of that was happening, it's also the year where I produced the most content ever. the scripts that I write for the podcast, the scripts that I wrote for every single workshop, every single plan, or what I call a holistic wellness blueprint for those individuals that I happened to coach or had the privilege of coaching this year. All of that, that's all me. But yet at the same time, it's the year where I rested the most, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And remember, I said to you that I was dealing with a lot of spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare doesn't wear you out spiritually only, even physically, where you don't have the energy. In the midst of me doing what God wanted me to do this year, with Him filling up that canvas, I rested the most, which tells me that the work that God wants us to do has rest. It has a rhythm. What's coming to mind right now is also the fact that I didn't even set any wellness goal. I didn't say I want to lose weight or whatever. I just followed a rhythm of any sort. If one day I woke up and I was like, hey, I want to have a six pack, I literally worked towards having a six pack and I lost it. Because I was like, this is hard to maintain and my situation is not in a conducive way, or it's not allowing me to sustain it, for example. But I still have a healthy weight. I still look the best that to me, I feel the best that I've ever had in my entire life. Mentally, I'm healthy. Physically, I'm healthy. All of the things. So I didn't even need to set those goals because it was part of me. But anyway, moral of the story, resting is part of the rhythm. It's part of you setting your goals. So what I want to say to you is rest stabilizes you for the season that you're about to step into. And your next season is not waiting for you on the 1st of January. Your next season is not waiting for you on the 1st of January. It's waiting for the version of you that can carry that season. And that, my friend, can happen on a random Tuesday in February. I don't know why I'm picking February, but yeah, you get my point. Or even not February, that version of you can emerge on the 27th of December. This reminds me, actually, last year, December, on the 28th of December specifically, I decided that, hey, I'm going to read the entire Bible in less than a year. Like I said, I was in spiritual warfare, I was fighting for my life, and I didn't want to perish. But anyway, that season started. I didn't want to wait until the 1st of January. I started on a random Thursday. Hope it was a Thursday, I don't know. But on a random day in the middle of the week on the 28th of December. On an ordinary day, nothing happening. So we often want to box our seasons and our goals into a specific timeline that doesn't align with what God has in store for us. But also maybe we haven't become the people that we need to become in order to carry out that next season, that next promotion, that next whatever that next is. Because transformation doesn't check the calendar. Becoming doesn't obey the dates. God doesn't wait for New Year's Day to shift something on the inside of you. Some transitions are sudden. Some transitions are gradual, like healing, for example. And both are scary. And it's okay to be scary, but both are also necessary. But like I said, resting is essential. And resting is what helps us move through them without breaking. Because remember, I feel like in the in-between, you are the most fragile. But what resting does is that it's where your spirit catches up with your reality. It's where you have clarity and clarity settles in your mind. It's where your strength, or the strength that you're developing, starts to take root in yourself. This is where you stop rushing and finally you start listening. And rest is where you are silent enough to hear when God tells you that, hey, you're still becoming, you are still on track. This reminds me of the verse that we should walk in step with the Holy Spirit. This is where you are. When you rest, you allow yourself to hear where you are and you check in with the Holy Spirit. So I don't know what you're thinking in this moment. I don't know how this entire year was for you. I don't know if you're waiting or you're hoping that December would just disappear and then you let January come and you will start again. I don't know where you are. But all I know is you can surrender all of that to God and ask Him, what is the timeline for you in this season? And if you're needing some help, I have a newsletter that I send out every single week. That's another thing that I've done this year, actually. Oh my gosh. Okay, back to here. I have a newsletter that I send out. It has different reflections on holistic wellness. And by holistic wellness, I don't mean just what you eat and so forth. I mean about how to navigate these transition seasons. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up using the link in the description. Another thing is that I want to highlight or talk about or bring another perspective to it is that I mentioned the whole, nature mimicking our transition journeys, is that there's a moment where when you look at a tree, right, it looks very still. It looks as if it's barren, there's no movement. It's almost as if there's no life into it. But underneath or beneath the bark, the tree is thickening, it's deepening, it's strengthening its core so it can carry the weight of the next seasons and whatever shifts happen. A seed needs to die before it breaks open. Like I said to you, a butterfly often needs to struggle through everything before it even starts to fly. If you think about the ocean, a tide pulls back before the biggest wave could come in. Even stars, if we look at them, stars are formed in the dark before they even shine. And sometimes transitions may feel like that. They are still on the outside, but transforming you on the inside. So what is God strengthening in you beneath the surface? Things that you probably or maybe have been overlooking this entire year. I guess what I'm trying to say, or the purpose of this episode, is really to say, spend time with God, spend time with yourself, reevaluate your goals, but don't tie your goals to a date, because that's on God's agenda. That's on His side. He says that everything has a timing, but we don't know that time. We don't know. We like to put dates and whatnot, and they are good, right? There are moments where it's good to have dates, but sometimes it's really not necessary. Another example that I want to give, there was a year where I did a digital vision board, and I didn't put dates to it. I remember how it looks like. I had a car at one point. I had a car on the vision board. I had transcribing because I wanted to transcribe. I had holistic wellness things. There were other things. I wanted to be healthy, my relationship with God, relationships, all of that. Until one day, I think it was 2 years later, I opened that vision board and I realized I've achieved every single thing on that vision board and I needed to start a new one. Had I put dates onto that, I think I would have been frustrated and probably given birth, quote unquote, prematurely, or aborted certain goals. So again, I will say, perhaps sit with God. And so before we end, if it's safe with you, let's reflect a bit. Close your eyes if you need to. Inhale slowly and exhale it out. Let your mind settle into the following questions. Let the answers arise as they do. Just settle your spirit. What part of me is ending? Ask yourself that question. What part of me is ending? Don't criticize. Don't judge. Don't try to discern or to figure out why. Then what part of me is becoming? What is God shifting in me, quietly so? Where am I being invited to rest instead of rush? As I said to you, God is never in a rush. Yes, there are moments where there is a sense of urgency to doing certain things. However, He's never in a rush. Where do you need to let go of your rhythm and align with heaven's rhythm? So what part of me is ending? What part of me is becoming? What is God shifting on the inside of you? Where are you being invited to rest? And so keep those answers and let them rest. You can breathe again and let it out. Just let your heart speak gently. May you know that you are exactly where you're meant to be. You are living in the dash. And if you've never heard it before, the dash is holy ground. You can take one last deep breath in and let it out slowly. So you can open your eyes if you had them closed. Now I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you so much for going deep with me today. If this episode made you right in your transition, if it reminded you that you are in a season of waiting, you are in the in-between, may you know that it's not a mistake. And as always, share it with someone who might be in that season as well, who might just need a reminder that, hey, becoming takes time and it is not bound to the calendar. And if you want to go a little bit deeper or connect with me, then join my newsletter. Okay, so until next time, keep resting, keep becoming whole, keep exploring life, one intentional breath at a time.